Hi everyone, welcome to Guitar Shed. My name is Parker Smith, and this is one of my dogs, Charlie Parker. Today we're going to be talking about dominant hand technique. So I don't say right hand because there's a lot of left-handed guitar players out there. And your dominant hand is the one that's going to be doing all of the picking, all the strumming, all that good stuff. So your dominant hand technique can be divided into picking or fingerstyle guitar. So we're going to kind of go in depth a little bit on each of those styles and just give you an overview and see which styles you like best. There's no correct or incorrect way to play. The only incorrect way that I say is if you have tension. So we don't want to have any tension in your hand, your fingers, your wrist, because we don't want to cause injury. Let's start with our picking technique. We have a few different types of picks. The one I use is a Black Jazz 3 is what it's called. It's a smaller pick. A friend of mine turned these onto me a few years ago, and I really like them because there's not a lot of between you and the strings. We also have just a regular old guitar center pick. This one's a thin one. They come in different thicknesses. Thin ones are better for strumming chords. And we have a thicker, just normal pick here. This one, you can see it's a little bit harder to bend, is better for lead players. You can dig in a little bit more with these kind of picks. I'm also a big fan of credit card picks. This is made out of a credit card. You can buy something called a pick puncher, and this is great for my students. They love punching them, and they love collecting these guys. And we also have a thumb pick, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, but it's basically just an extension of your thumb where you can play with your fingers too. So those are the different types of picks. So feel free, take your pick. Alright, so now we're going to talk a little bit about how to hold the pick. I get a lot of questions about how do I hold the pick. Well, essentially you don't want to hold it too tight, so you're gripping and you get a lot of popping at the strings, and you don't want to hold it too loose that you drop the pick. So you want it right in the middle. Eventually you'll just get the feel for how to hold it, and you want to hold it between your thumb and your first finger. Just somewhere that feels natural. So, as far as picking techniques, there's a lot of techniques out there, but one of the most talked about ones is alternate picking. Alternate picking is just alternating between downstrokes and upstrokes. So I always demonstrate to my students, it's pretty simple. If you want to play fast, you got to learn how to alternate pick. This is about how fast I can play without alternate picking. And with alternate picking, it's so it's just kind of math. When it comes down to speed, you have to learn how to alternate pick. So I just suggest, taking it slowly and trying just basic scales. That's the G major scale there. So basically, the toughest thing about alternate picking is crossing strings. Stuff like we have a lot of moving back and forth between different strings. Some of you may have noticed that my right hand is kind of floating above the guitar. There's a couple different philosophies. Some people like to have their guitar resting on the bridge. This is great for if you have to mute a lot of stuff. Some people like to have their hand floating. And so by floating, I mean not touching the guitar at all. Then there's also people that like to rest on the pick guard as like an anchor. A lot of classical guitarists don't really advocate that because it can create some tension. So again, these are all just different options you can use when you're approaching the guitar with your right hand technique. So now let's talk about something called hybrid picking. Hybrid picking is when we use the pick in combination with our fingers. So if we use just one finger, I'm going to use my ring finger here on my dominant hand. And what I did there was I played the 4th string and the 1st string at the same time. And what's cool about this is you can keep playing. You hear that kind of stuff a lot. And then you can begin to incorporate the use of other fingers too when you're using bigger chords. And even pick through some of the chords. One of the more famous types of hybrid picking is with an alternating bass. So essentially we're going to have our thumb pick right here, and you can use a regular pick too, but just alternate between some different strings. You can, here I'm going between the root and the 5th. You can do the root and the 3rd. So sometimes it's called Travis picking, flat picking. There's a couple different names for that style of guitar, but essentially what you're doing is alternating between the lower strings with your thumb and then using the other fingers to play the higher strings. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about classical guitar. So for classical guitar, we're not going to use a pick. We're going to use our fingers. And the names of our fingers are associated with letters. So this is P for your thumb, I for your index, M for your middle finger, and A for your annular or ring finger. So when we play classical guitar, we're going to rest our thumb on the lower strings and our I, M, and A on the higher strings. And when you pluck the strings, you want to pluck in towards your hand. And your thumb, when you pluck with your thumb, will rest on your 1st finger. Now it's real important to just keep your wrist straight, nice and relaxed. I've heard people say you want to pretend like you're holding a tennis ball. All right, now let's talk a little bit about jazz guitar. So for jazz guitar, most people use a pick when playing individual single note lines. Now, for solo jazz guitar, it's more beneficial to use the fingerstyle approach. Grab chords and individual notes pretty easily. There's also people that do a solo jazz guitar approach with kind of a hybrid style. Kind of get the best of both worlds. And there's also a style of playing with your thumb. This was made famous mostly by Wes Montgomery, who really elevated it. And he had a double jointed thumb, so he could go back and forth. But most people, when they're playing with their thumb, they use just downstrokes. So you get a mellower tone with the flesh part of your thumb. And, you know, there's also people that play entirely with their thumb. Wes did that too. So those are different types of jazz guitar playing. Let's talk a little bit about slide guitar playing. So many slide guitarists will play with their fingers. So you can get a mellower tone with your fingers as opposed to so yeah, that's a little overview of right hand technique. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time at the Guitar Shed.